In this presentation, we are going to go ahead and look into the OS hardening concepts. So what is OS hardening? OS hardening generally is the process of securely configuring the operating system and applying the necessary software patches to minimize the security risks. So this is one of the most key things that is being carried out in the corporate world. So most of the times corporate networks are being targeted by most of the attackers. So it is really important for the corporate networks to harden their operating system so as to stay away from most of the attacks. So with that, let us go ahead and look into the different mechanisms that are being followed for OS hardening. So starting off with the Windows OS hardening. Minimizing the software packages. So it is really necessary to minimize the amount of software packages that are generally installed on the system so as to minimize the vulnerabilities. So it is quite known that the less number of software packages installed, the less number of vulnerabilities that could be found. The second being the removal of unnecessary software packages. So it is really important to remove all the unwanted and the unnecessary software packages, because if there is a vulnerability that an attacker could go ahead and exploit from those systems, it is quite easier for him to go ahead and compromise the system. Disabling of the autoplay function. So in the recent versions of the Windows operating system, it has seen that the autoplay function is actually disabled. But then in the older versions of the Windows operating system, we see that this function is generally enabled by default. So in a corporate network, this actually would create a havoc, because any external devices could be easily plugged in, and on autoplay, any sort of malicious file could easily run. So disabling the autoplay by default would actually be a better option. So the other method of the hardening of the OS would be the creation of two different user accounts. So it is really important to create two different user accounts, one that has got the admin rights and the other one with the limited rights. And it would be really good if the limited accounts could be used for the daily usage and the admin account only for installing our applications. And make sure all accounts are password protected, and the recommendation would be of using a strong password for all the accounts. And this could be brought in practice by the help of the proper password policy across the corporate network. So open ports generally pose a potential risk if the services running on the port are vulnerable to the remote attacks. So backdoors open ports on the infected machine. So it is really better to go ahead and port scan our own networks, and later on henceforth go ahead and close the unwanted listening ports. So in the demo section, we are going to go ahead and look into this in a much detailed manner. So apart from the normal methods of finding the open ports, it is even good if we could go ahead and find the open ports using the third-party applications such as the Process Hacker. So in the demo part, we are going to even look into this tool called Process Hacker, wherein we could go and find the open ports as well as terminate the some of the applications, some of the unwanted applications. So the next would be detection and removal of the unknown rootkits. So you could go ahead and download most of the trusted applications from the internet so as to perform a scan on the network or the system regarding to find the unknown rootkits. But then as seen in this demo, we are using the Kaspersky TDSS killer so as to remove the rootkits. So using EMET, that is Enhanced Mitigation Experience Toolkit, is also another way to harden the Windows operating system. So basically EMET is a tool that is made by the Microsoft, and which helps in preventing vulnerabilities in any softwares or applications from being exploited. So it basically makes use of 12 different security mitigation technologies such as the DEP, ASLR, SCHOP, and various different security mitigations. And in the demo part, we are going to have a much detailed look into this tool. So the usage of the third-party antiviruses or the third-party firewalls, such as the Komodo firewall, could also be used as the part of the good practice for OS hardening. And the usage of the TrueCrypt, though the TrueCrypt has been stopped, but still the previous versions of TrueCrypt could all actually be used for encrypting, for creating the encrypted disk or the encrypted volumes so as to store the confidential documents. So after getting to know about the Windows operating system hardening, let us go ahead and know about the methodologies for the Linux operating system hardening. So the first would be the disk partitioning. So we need to make sure that the separate partitions are made for the separate file systems, and we need to again make sure that the third-party applications that are generally installed on the Linux operating system should be on a separate file system under the /opt, so as to make sure that none of the applications affect any other file systems. So the next would be find the listening network ports. So it is seen that most of the times that the open ports generally pose a huge threat to the corporate networks or the systems. So it is really necessary to find and close all the network ports that are open and which are not actually needed. And we could even go ahead and filter the ports using the uncomplicated firewall. So that is the UFW. And we could even go ahead and remove the services from the startup. So these will be looking into a little detail in the demo part. And the next would be the setting of the expiration date for passwords, so which is really a good security practice among the corporate environment. So here we could see that chh is the command. So minus the -m would give the maximum number of days that this password could be set for, and the -m could actually give it the minimum number of days, and -W would give the warning for the days that actually is been specified there. And again, as we were talking about this in the Windows OS hardening part, again, minimizing the packages to minimize the vulnerability is one of the good practices that could be followed, and keeping the kernel and other packages up to date. So that is again a good security practice that could be followed. And again, using of the strong passwords. So this could be done using the password policies across the corporate networks.